Yo, Zane, brother, how you been?
Good, man. How are you?
Yeah, good, man. It's good to finally do this kind of like podcasting thing properly, and obviously letting people know about the TikTok shop kind of journey roller coaster. Because yeah, I think it's what the people want to hear, right?
For sure, for sure. Roller coaster is definitely a good word these days.
Well, yeah, every time I speak to anyone, whether it's like I say, people in the industry, brands, or ability, it's just the roller coaster is the best way to put it because, like I say, you'll be the highs are high, the lows are lows, and everything in between is literally just like a whirlwind slash roller coaster. So no, I feel like it's just always moving so quickly as well, right? Which, like I say, a roller coaster does if you're on a good roller coaster anyway. So yeah, I feel like these kind of conversations will be good for people who can literally just kind of listen and kind of find out what's going on in the TikTok shop kind of world. And yeah, kind of then see if people like it. We can obviously do a lot more of them, right?
Sweet. Yeah, no, sounds good. I think it's good to have it in a bunch of different formats. We post a lot on like Twitter, LinkedIn for
Mhm.
people who like to read. Some people just want to listen and do other stuff while they're listening to the podcast.
As- yeah, exactly. And I think as well, the good thing, obviously, again, going on tangible, Twitter, it's here today, gone tomorrow kind of thing, whereas at least like whether it's a video or podcast, people can watch it and go back to it, revert back to it, stuff like that, which is good. So yeah, hopefully this can be something that people can find value in.
Yep, exactly. I think the ethereal nature of Twitter is just it's great for like that kind of breaking news, like what's going on in the last 24, 48 hours. But
Yeah,
YouTube podcasts, definitely, I feel like it builds up more over time. It's a little bit more long lasting.
exactly. Exactly that. Or sending memes out on Twitter since you're the meme king of TikTok shop.
Yeah, that's honestly where I feel the most comfortable. It's like I have started cross posting over to like LinkedIn, which has done really well. Like I feel like LinkedIn is one of the easier places now to get traction.
Yeah,
As long as you're not like
100%.
content, because there's so much AI content that if you post something
Mhm.
that seems genuine and well written, it can get some good reach. Um, but even then, it's just like it's not as much my personality type as like Twitter. So
Yeah, no, you are literally. I'm trying to follow your footsteps. I can't keep all your memes. I don't know where you find them from, but yeah, you do this proud out there, bro.
appreciate it.
Yeah. So yeah, so let's. I think obviously the main topic, well, obviously the topic in terms of what people think right now is TikTok Shop going to get banned? What's the situation with that? Again, no matter who I speak to, whether it's again people in general, family, brands, clients, whoever it is, everyone's asking me, "Oh, what's happening with TikTok right now? Is it going to get banned? Are you going to literally have no job and this and that kind of thing?" So it would kind of good to kind of like just talk about it, see where things are, what's your kind of thoughts on it as well. And yeah, just kind of give the people kind of like a bite-sized information, well, not bite-sized, but a chunk in terms of what makes sense in terms of where it's going, our opinions on it, and yeah, kind of go from there with it really.
For sure. Yeah, I think if we were talking a little bit before we started recording, it's like if
Yeah.
like business is like a roller coaster, or like TikTok shop is like a roller coaster, like this whole trial and this whole ban situation has been like the epitome of a roller coaster. Just like one day the DC court says like nope, the law is going to stand. Like 3-0 unanimous decision. 2 days after that, they like deny any injunction to delay it. A day after that, TikTok's files an appeal with the Supreme Court. 2 days after that, they take the case. So it's just been like so up and down. Because it was pretty scary when the court was just like unanimously like, nope, this law stands. And then who knows, the Supreme Court's going to pick it up. They might not. They only pick up like a very small minority of cases. But now it's seeming like a little bit more positive, where it's like, hey, okay, the Supreme Court said they'll hear oral arguments. Usually, it takes them some time to make decisions. Hopefully, they give TikTok some time um, before they institute the ban on the 19th. Hopefully, they give them some time so that they can come to a decision. Um, so it'll be interesting. It's like it's still like they're keeping people on their toes, where they haven't decided whether or not to extend the date of the ban. So they're really keeping people on their toes. They're always doing
Mhm.
stuff at the last minute. And I saw this tweet earlier too. Is like I don't know if you've seen. There was like these new like FinCEN requirements for businesses in the U.S. where like you had to
Yeah.
file like all these like paperwork. Like I think the fine was like $200 per day that you didn't file it, and only like 20% of businesses that file
Ridiculous.
it. And at the very last minute, I think it was like 2 weeks before the deadline, there was like a case where like some kind of group representing small businesses sued the government, said that it was like, you know, it was way too um, just like burdensome of a reporting requirement. They won the injunction, and it's like, okay, nobody has to file until, you know, there's more clarity on it. So I saw someone tweet like, always do stuff at the last minute, whether it be like paying off
100%.
government funded loans. Like when it comes to the government, like government paying off government funded loans, doing like these new reporting requirements because they almost always like issue a delay or it's like it gets blocked. So I think we're seeing that as well with like this case where it's just like it's gonna come down to like the very last minute. Like they might even make the decision to extend or whatever they decide to do on like the 17th or the 18th. Which I think why TikTok is constantly setting these like dates where like, hey, please decide by this date, please decide by that date,
Mhm.
so that they have time to then pivot, and at least the app stores have time to figure out what they want to do before the 19th. But yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Like this holiday season, like the TikTok lawyers are probably working overtime trying to figure
I know,
out
right?
the last minute adjustments to their Supreme Court appeal.
Yeah, and that's the right you mentioned because again, obviously we'll be in the holidays period as well. Because obviously, what we're recording obviously on the 20th of December right now. So the 17th is literally around the corner. And obviously, once you get the holidays out, the New Year's, it's literally 17, 82 days to go. So from your perspective, where's your head at? I know you mentioned obviously in terms of like you think it's not going to kind of go through, but what's making you kind of think that it's just based on just the chatter from like the TikTok perspective, or just in terms of like these kind of like scenarios in the past? What are you kind of thinking is kind of making you feel positive still about the whole situation?
Yeah, I think like everyone commenting on it, like on Twitter, like obviously no one's a legal expert. You
True.
have things like Polymarket where like they're usually pretty accurate.
Hmm.
Like if you saw with the US election, it's like on Polymarket, it would basically be resolved or decided before it even got announced on CNN, Fox, wherever you get your news. So Polymarket's been pretty accurate where it's like, hey, people are putting their money where their mouth is. It's not just some political commentator who's like grandstanding trying to, you know, get clicks or attention by being like, it's 100% getting banned or it won't get banned. Like there's 0% chance. It's looking like 30 something percent chance on Polymarket. And I think that's pretty fair because it's like, okay, if the Supreme Court has decided to pick up this case, they're going to hear it out. You would think that they would, um, but they're going to hear it out and obviously give input in some way. They might just say, hey, the appeals court's right, or they might disagree. But it's gonna take them a lot of time because the Supreme Court, like, the whole idea is that they come up with an interpretation of the law and whether it's constitutional, and that kinda stands for a long time. Like, this will help
Yeah.
define the, you know, free speech versus, you know, national security, where the balance is. It'll define that for decades. So, obviously, they're gonna take some
Yeah.
time to do it. Historically, they take some time. You would think that they would give TikTok breathing room because if they don't, then, you know, they have this standard where it's like, will it cause irreparable harm if they don't extend this deadline? And you could say
Yeah.
like, no, TikTok can sell so that there won't be irreparable harm. But if they can't within like 9 days, which, you know, reasonably you can't even sell a house like within 9 days. Like, how are you gonna
Literally, right?
sell a
It's
whole listing and get
a
a good
billion dollar
price? Like,
company like this.
yeah, and they're obviously like against the wall. Like the best thing about negotiations is that you can always walk away. That's how you get the
Mhm.
best price because you know, hey, I'm not gonna do this. If TikTok's forced to sell, we're talking like hundreds of millions of dollars probably off the asking price because they have to sell. So it's a really bad position that the laws put them in. So you would think the court would be like, hey, we're gonna give them some time before we force this sale on them, sale or ban. You would think like that seems like the most logical outcome. But I mean, it's a crazy world we live in. That's why I think there's still a 30% chance that they're like, nope, we're gonna let this law stand. And then you know, once you hear our assessment on it, you'll understand why we let the law stand. But like, you know, good luck, sell that shit
Yeah.
or don't. No,
Honestly, black or white, right? Yeah, I totally agree with that. And like you mentioned as well, I think worst case scenario was, well, my opinion anyway, is like say there will have to be some sort of extension because, like you say, they can't sort of set a rule on it, and then basically TikTok Shop is just, or sorry, TikTok's just banned completely. But again, that's just not how it works. I mean, in terms of that kind of thing. So again, it will have to be like appeals, and obviously it will just drag out. So I do think again, and again, just like you hear, like say from a TikTok perspective, they're kind of treating it as business as usual. Do you know what I mean? They're still hiring. There's so much running the TikTok kind of ecosystem right now as well. So when you kind of speak to anyone at TikTok as well, you kind of feel confident, whether that's them just putting on a front, who knows? But at the same time, they seem to, they're not going to be paying these lawyers like cheap money. Do you know what I mean? They're going to have a good team in place. They're going to kind of be doing the right thing in terms of obviously trying to get this resolved. And like you mentioned as well, they're not going to be, it's not in their interest to start because obviously as the propriety, it's the algorithm. Do you know what I mean? So if they're selling the whole of TikTok to the US, that's obviously going to have an effect on obviously the other markets because they're selling obviously a part of what makes TikTok work, right? So again, it's going to be down valuing the rest of the markets as well. So I feel like it's definitely a longer play with all of this. And the 19th, obviously, yes, it's a date that's kind of on the wall right now. But let's say if it does get banned, I don't think it's going to be 19 midnight. Everything just kind of shuts down from a TikTok perspective for sure.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point in terms of the algorithm because a lot of the people that I think aren't following it too closely will be like, well, obviously they're just going to sell it versus like lose like a business that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But then the
Mhm.
complexity is like, the fact that China has the algorithm on their exports control list, where if they try to sell, China can block the sale because what's in it for
Yeah,
China for, ByteDance to sell out? There's nothing. And
correct.
versus
Yeah,
a US company would start to understand how TikTok runs their algorithm, say they've done stuff, they've ever cooperated with the Chinese government, then a sale might uncover things like that. So there's no real
well,
benefit for the Chinese government for like allowing the sale to happen. Maybe in like a strategical political move, with Donald Trump's involvement, where they would allow the sale in exchange for something else that the U.S. does. That I think is pretty small chance. I don't think it's that's going to move that quickly, or TikTok is that important to either side where they're gonna, come to like a deal. But yeah, I agree. What's also interesting is like, say it were to get banned, it seems like the biggest thing that Congress is pushing is just like the apps being delisted from the App Store. They've
yeah,
sent a
that's it, right?
a, a letter. They sent a letter like reminding, Google and Apple to do that, where that's not too crippling in my eyes. Like I think if they did that and then TikTok had 2 weeks to like pull some kind of maneuver, we get some kind of pause to the law or sell the company. It gives them plenty of time because like how often do people update their phones or how often do people install
Literally,
TikTok? I know
right?
there's probably thousands of downloads per day, but I don't think that's too big of a deal. But I also saw on the law they prohibited like hosting providers or something like that from dealing with TikTok. So if that's the case where it's like, I'm on like Spectrum or like whatever internet and they have to block TikTok, where then I can't use TikTok on my phone with Wi-Fi. That's a whole nother thing. That would be like effectively on the
Well,
19th. It's like either you're on 4G data trying to get on it or you're using a VPN, which most people aren't going to do. So effectively that
yeah,
would really kill it on the 19th. So that'll also be interesting. It's like, okay, maybe Google and Apple will pull it from the App Store, which I think is another important point. It's like some people were saying, oh, Trump's just going to say, as soon as he comes into office on the 20th, like, oh, TikTok is within the confines of this law. It doesn't apply to them. Don't worry about it. But then Google and Apple, they have like this fine that they can get if they're violating the law, and it's like per download. So I don't think they're just
well,
going to take Trump's word for it and be like, oh, okay, Trump's not going to, they're just going to remove it because
yeah,
months down the line, or if there's someone else in power, and they could be like, hey, you've been violating this law for like this long. So that's another thing to consider is like, I don't think the app stores are going to be, fighting for TikTok to stay on there. I think come the 19th, if it's like, hey, they didn't reach a deal, they're just going to pull it from the app store. They'll sweat
yeah.
off their back.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, because obviously the bigger picture, when you think of like Apple and Google, TikTok is just another app amongst the thousand millions of apps that's on the platform, right? So to them, they would prefer to remove that, no fines, nothing like that back. If it comes back, then obviously they reinstall it, right? So again, from their perspective, they got to think in their best interest. They're not going to be like, oh, we're fighting for TikTok, let's keep it on, like, because why would they? Right? It's them. It's not a win in their case because again, like you say, they've got other apps that they need to obviously be focusing on, and that's kind of what their kind of situation is. So yeah, no, I totally agree with that. So with that, then in terms of obviously you as a brand owner, agency owner, what are you kind of doing right now in terms of preparing for whether it's the yay TikTok continuing or no TikTok kind of gone? What's kind of your thought process and what are you kind of doing to prepare for both scenarios?
Yeah, and for a while we were thinking heavily about diversifying. We're like, hey, we need to like shift our focus a bit. Now it's gotten to a point where we're like, okay, you know, all life is about risk. All business is about
For
risk.
this,
It's just like about the risk adjusted return of everything that you do. And we've gotten so specialized in TikTok Shop that we could take our eye off the ball and do something else in the
with
meantime. And what we're thinking and what the market is predicting is like 70% chance that like TikTok Shop doesn't get banned. So it doesn't really make sense for us to do that. Even if we were to spin up something else, it's just nothing is as strong in social selling as TikTok Shop is right now. Um, that being said, like you probably a good idea to like for us to not hire as aggressively, not spend as aggressively as maybe as TikTok is. Um, because we don't have to try and instill confidence the way TikTok does. So that's probably our move is like, hey, we're gonna keep pushing on TikTok Shop. We're gonna keep taking clients and we're gonna keep investing money in it like normal because we're pretty confident that's not gonna go anywhere. If it does get banned, then we're gonna have to pivot a lot more quickly. And we're not TikTok. We can move. We're a small business, so we can move pretty quickly. We move pretty quickly into TikTok Shop. We can move pretty quickly into something else. I think that we'll see, you know, obviously everyone's talking about the flight of users. It's going to go to Instagram. It's going to go to YouTube. That being said, do I think a shop is going to like YouTube shop or Meta shop is just going to get to the point of TikTok, like functionally just because users have moved over? No. Um,
the way,
I think if you do like you do like organic drop shipping, like great, like Instagram's probably going to do amazing for you. As soon as it gets banned. If you do like meta ads, I think it's going to do amazing for you because there's going to be more eyeballs. So if you can, if you can scale up spend faster than these brands that are just like budgeting and every month they're seeing the performance and they're increasing, if you can just start crazy shifting up spend, then you're going to be in a really good spot. Because obviously there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on meta. But for us who like specialize in social selling, I don't think we're just going to move over the shop there. I think where our specialties lie between my partner and I and like our business is like we've been media buying on Meta, on TikTok, running ads, doing all that. So I think we would shift our focus there. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about App Lovin', like hopefully App Lovin' becomes like self-hosted. I think that would be smart of them to do is like all these small
yeah,
businesses just try to move to mobile app games. Who knows when the self-serve platform comes out, but I think that would be a good fit for us. Where it's like, hey, we're pretty adept at running ads. We can also source the creatives, but we don't really love to do that. That's not like our forte, working with
mhm,
affiliates and sourcing those creatives. But as far as the media buying, I think there's going to be a huge shift. So like people can really take advantage of like a ton of people go to Instagram. Those ads are going to like the CPMs are going to come down because there's more users. And then if you know how to scale spend on Meta, you're going to have a really great few months until things like balance out.
yeah. No, I think you nailed it on the head. And a good point you made there as well in terms of like not pivoting yet, because like you mentioned as well, by the time you've pivoted, it's not like it's going to be a quick kind of change, right? If you, let's say you started to do, let's say an app loving agency all of a sudden, it's not going to be overnight. You obviously have to build the infrastructure, even though you obviously got the skill, stuff like that, to move over to another platform to obviously then build that reputation, change like your kind of like leadership into that kind of and all that kind of stuff. That takes time, right? In terms of being able to do that. And like you mentioned, and I agree as well. I like the high risk, the high reward side of things in terms of like being in TikTok shop and being in TikTok, because again, TikTok was always a platform for me that I always believed in and trusted and knew that it would one point become a place where a lot more brands users will obviously like flock to it, because again, there was just so much happening in the background, and obviously you plant all the seeds and obviously it starts to become something which obviously is happening now. So the fact, like I say, we kind of built up all them kind of reps in this kind of platform, I feel like again, once, let's say if it, again, playing devil's advocate, if obviously everything all goes to plan, we're obviously in the space where we're going to probably see an influx of more brands wanting to jump on TikTok shop. There's going to be more users jumping into the TikTok shop, because again, all this media and everything's going to push that wave of people, that wave of traffic to the actual platform right now. And just from that side of things, I think it makes sense. Because like I say, if it does go down, again, obviously we're skilled enough to be able to pivot, whether it's for brands we work with now, whether it's for just in general. I think there's enough scope and enough, like, whether it's like say the whole social commerce or whether it's media buying, there's enough out there right now to be able to move and obviously make the most out of it. That's my personal opinion anyway.
Yep. I definitely agree with that. there's also like that idea, like there's this line in like Game of Thrones where it's like chaos is a ladder, where it's like when things
Yeah.
shift quickly, um, it's always an opportunity for whoever is like has the time and the energy and the desire to take advantage of that. And we saw that
Mhm.
like, for example, with COVID, where it's like things shifted so quickly to the digital world that like if you were there to like take advantage of remote work or you were there to like take advantage
Mhm.
of all the industries that benefited from that sudden shift, then it was a positive thing for you versus if you were like a very large entrenched company, you're running like a, a franchise of gyms or something where you just couldn't pivot, then like obviously you just, took a heavy hit or you're like a restaurant or something like that. Um, but for us, because there's gonna be so much change and so many big brands, so many different industries where they can't move as fast, where they need someone that can just come in and do it. That's obviously a positive if you have the ability to do that. Anytime I think there's a big change, it gives a benefit to the non-incumbents. It's like the David
Mhm.
versus the Goliath type thing because they can move quicker. That's like the biggest thing that I've seen for a lot of the brands that are doing well on TikTok Shop is that they move so much quicker than some of the bigger brands and getting on the platform early because they didn't have to worry about, oh, this doesn't work with my existing ERP system. This is going to mess things up if I get on TikTok Shop right away. Oh, I have all these maps, like all this like minimum pricing. I can't, flash sale 20,
Mhm.
30% without like getting, making sure that my retailers aren't going to be pissed or whatever it is. Like they had all these things that stopped them versus if you look at like the top supplement brands on TikTok Shop a few months ago and even now, like none of them are like the big, 8-figure, 9-figure brands
Mhm.
that were, the incumbents like a year or two ago. It was like a lot of those smaller, very nimble brands, a lot of startups, a lot of like private labeled products. Just people on, some of the brands are owned by like people who have like really strong creator connections or they have like a creator group. They were the ones that were able to move really quickly on TikTok Shop and benefit the most when TikTok Shop started to grow really quickly. So I think that same thing will happen in this regard where it's like whatever gets shifted to, whatever gets sprung. Like maybe one of these tech companies is like waiting for the ban because they know that'll be the best time to release a feature or something like that. Very possible.
Yeah, and that you nailed it on the head there. I was thinking the same thing. I feel like they are probably, whether again it is Meta, whether it's YouTube, they are probably waiting to see what happens with TikTok because obviously the time that TikTok Shop's been around now, you're telling me that Meta's not been trying to develop and get the social commerce to a good place, right? Because obviously they tried it with Instagram shops, didn't really work. They kind of missed that affiliate portion of it. So they're obviously waiting to see what happens, in my opinion, again, anyway, because I feel like if TikTok does, let's just say, disappears, who's going to be the biggest one jump and who's going to be to benefit from it, like say Meta, whether it is from like a media buy ads perspective, or again, them influencers, affiliates moving over or back to the platform, which again, you got to keep in mind that a lot of these creators have probably moved from Instagram to TikTok shop because they know obviously we can actually make some good money from here from promoting product, commission, all that good stuff as well. So again, I do think in the background, Meta are probably crossing their fingers that obviously TikTok does go away because if not, I do think again, obviously social commerce, Meta will become a force because again, just based on use base, then all the good stuff comes with that. But again, they are if the longer TikTok stays around, they're always going to be chasing. And I don't know if they will be able to catch up with TikTok at the pace that TikTok is also going right now.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I've always been confused what's taking Meta so long because they have
Mhm.
Instagram Shop. They have like,
Yeah.
just like the amazing number of advertisers, D2C advertisers that are already there. Versus when TikTok Shop started, like I was talking to someone about this who worked at TikTok, like they were cold calling people from like an office in just like a cheap office in like Mexico City. They're just like cold calling brands trying to get them on TikTok Shop. Meta already has like
Crazy.
all these brands that like live and die by Meta. Um, I was always confused. I'm like, all they have to do is add in the affiliate portion, right? They just need affiliates. They're going to get a percentage of the sales, and they're going to make content, and it's going to link to Instagram Shop. So I'm not sure why that hasn't happened yet. Like maybe if the ban happens, they're going to take advantage of it to like that would be like the best time to launch it. Who knows?
Mhm.
For YouTube, I'm like not as confident that they're really going to put that much effort behind it because I think Google as a whole is like 90% of their revenue is coming from like search, and they're doing all this other stuff to like disguise the fact that they're basically like a search monopoly. They're like, oh look, we're you know we're so concerned about doing like some kind of like self-driving car or like whatever it is, and then they'll
Yeah,
after a few months they'll just like shut it down. Not
it's
saying that
got
they're not like really going into AI and like other things that they're trying to do with the resources that they have. But yeah, at the end of the day, there's like no real competitor for like Google search. So I don't think they're gonna be the ones that are like, hey, let me get this. Like TikTok Shop will do maybe like 1 billion revenue or like 1 billion in sales across stores in a month, and say TikTok's cut is like 6%. Then they have all these expenses with like they have a pretty big team behind it. They're doing all these subsidies. The profit from TikTok Shop is probably not huge to something like Google
yeah,
right now, where they're like, hey, I really need this money. They don't really need that money. I think Meta, like, if TikTok Shop were to get banned, there's like, on one hand, they might just they adopt the affiliate thing, the shop thing, or, and I think this might even be more likely, they just continue business as usual because it's like, okay, great.
yeah.
Now we don't have TikTok Shop and the social selling thing that's
Okay.
going to come and eat our lunch. We have more time. They're a huge, huge bureaucracy. Like you can see with the ads manager on Meta, it just keeps getting worse. Like the UI is getting worse.
Oh,
The features are getting
awful.
worse. Performance was down this year. Like App Lovin is starting to creep up for D2C brands, which I don't think is that concerning for Meta. I think they have a lot of different advertisers on there. We're kind of in a bubble where we're like, oh, Meta is gonna get screwed when Apple Event takes off. It's like they have a ton of different advertisers, not just like
They'll be fine.
D2C e-com brands. They'll be fine, exactly. And I think they're still growing. So, like every time you check their numbers, you're like, oh man, my Meta performance isn't great. Like blah, blah, blah. Nobody's doing well on Meta, blah, blah, blah. You check the numbers and it's like they're growing every quarter, like quarter over
Exactly
quarter.
right.
The
So
stock price going up.
something's
They're
happening
making more
right.
money. It's like, yeah, they're doing fine. Like there's so many legacy brands that are probably running serious spend on Meta for like the first time. There's so many, even
Yeah.
like when ecom feels soft, like you're like, oh man, I'm not seeing a lot of screenshots on Twitter. Then the numbers come out and it's like e-commerce has grown like 12, 15%. Malls have dropped by 4% because there's just so many more entrants coming on, and so many of them that aren't like, they're not like small businesses that are tweeting about it. They're just like these big legacy brands. But I think Meta will be fine without Shop. I think YouTube will be fine. So it'll really, the sad thing about the decision is if it does get banned, it's like almost going to slow the innovation of social commerce, which is taking off in Asia,
Mhm.
in the US, because nobody is like properly incentivized or has like the funding to compete with TikTok. It was really just TikTok. Like people have been posting that on the TikTok app too, where they're like, there's no other platform where I feel comfortable posting, because Instagram is so polished and high pressure.
Yeah.
LinkedIn obviously is like
Mhm.
very corporate. YouTube is still like very like polished, so you want to make like a highly edited video. TikTok, you can just whip up and just like start talking to it like it's your friend and post it, and it's just
You
like
done.
it's very,
Yeah.
very low pressure. Exactly. So like there is no replacement for it, which sounds like dumb, but it's like in effect it's true until somebody comes up and like takes up that mantle.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And that's the thing about it, because again, I know we focus more on TikTok shop side of things, but like TikTok as a whole, like say, you can literally just get your phone now, create a video, whether it's green screen, something like that, post it, boom, it's out there, it's good to go. Whereas like say the other platforms, it needs to have more structure, more focus, all that side of things. And you can see where all the other platforms are going. Do you know what I mean? Even like LinkedIn now, they've obviously got video on there as well. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, the Instagram obviously is kind of taking the algorithm from TikTok as well. So again, TikTok has been leading, not just from like a shop perspective, but just from a platform, a social media perspective as well, in terms of being able to get that reach. If your content is good, it can reach so many eyeballs. And I think that is still where Instagram is still slacking. And again, like I say, the other platforms cannot keep up with that. So again, I do think it will be awakening if TikTok was to disappear, because again, and I think two ways, I feel like again, a lot of the creators will have a hard time maybe getting back to moving from TikTok to Instagram, figuring it all out in terms of what works on the platform from that side of things. And obviously, if they're not going to be able to make that kind of commission, because obviously they're not being able to sell, and obviously going back to maybe whether it's UGC deals and that side of things, where again, especially on Twitter, a lot of these affiliates creators have moved away from UGC deals because they know they can make so much more from TikTok shop as well. So again, it's going to be hard for them. And then also for brands as well, let's say from let's say organic perspective, on TikTok shop, you can literally post a founder story like now, and then 3 hours later you could post a meme. Instagram's a lot different, where you have to be concise about your profile. You need to have like a whole strategy for it. And again, it has to be like polished. So again, I feel like not just from TikTok as a whole, but I feel like the whole social commerce media space will definitely have a rude awakening. And I do think, like I say, it will be a massive disrupt in terms into the whole ecosystem, because I feel like there will be a kind of a lull in terms of people trying to figure it all out again, which again is obviously not what we kind of want to see. We kind of want to be moving forward in the social commerce kind of way rather than taking two steps back, which will be quite frustrating for a lot of people as well.
Yep. Yeah. And I like how you touched on creators because that's really like that's the backbone of TikTok Shop. That's what's
Mhm.
created all this is just like people making really good content and understanding content. And I do feel bad for a lot of them because a lot of them have, quit their full-time job. This is their full-time
Yeah.
thing. They've made good money that's been supporting their family by doing affiliate. And of course they can move to like just creating UGC, but it's just so capped the income a lot of
Yeah.
times where it's like maybe they're getting 150 per video, 200 per video versus TikTok Shop has such a performance element to it where it's like, hey, if you really work hard, and you understand how to sell, then you can make, 20, 30,000 a month. There's definitely plenty of creators that are doing that. I think another big winner in this might be, if it does get banned, would be those platforms that make it easy to track affiliate sales across platforms. So you have like things like Social Snowball, where it's like they get that magic link, you're able to see the commission. The affiliates get paid out, however, based on like what they drove. Those platforms I think will benefit because now brands have gotten into this mindset of it. Like those platforms actually existed like well before TikTok Shop. You saw Tab and some of those early
Age
brands.
Durant, yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, they've been doing this, and I think TikTok Shop probably got a lot of inspiration seeing Tabs and Social Snowball and like that combination of like posting across a bunch of accounts on TikTok, using affiliates and doing it a lot of it commission based. I'm sure that I mean also TikTok or Shop has been in other geos for a while, but I think they definitely looked at some of that was going on, and now if TikTok were to no longer or TikTok Shop were to no longer be a thing, some of these brands have now seen the power of that where they're like, hey, if we have some affiliates that we just give commission to, we can get some really good content and not having to pay a ton up front. So I think that is also is a model that will do really well regardless. Where it's like, hey, if TikTok Shop goes away and there's a platform that's like, hey, I have a link or I have some other way of like tracking how much affiliates are making. They can post on Instagram, they can post on YouTube, they can post on like whatever platform. Like it doesn't have to be built into the platform. We'll track it, we'll attribute it, we'll help you streamline the payments. Those platforms might do really well as well because then you're basically porting TikTok Shop to like anywhere on the internet without
Yeah.
needing the functionality of TikTok Shop. It just needs to be able to like link, so that they can put that affiliate tracking in there. So that's also interesting seeing how that develops. It is a good way for affiliates to still make affiliate commissions and not just be like flat fee.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, like I say, we always have to adapt, right? So again, obviously, having these platforms already out there will definitely help support that. And again, obviously, like I say, someone's got to win, someone's got to lose, right? So again, there's always a winner and losing these kind of scenarios. So it's just kind of figuring out who's going to come out on top, and like I say, who's going to kind of lose from that situation. So yeah, it's definitely going to be really just like eye opening. It's kind of like I kind of want to like fast forward now to kind of see it, but kind of just like every day we're kind of just like waiting. There's a new change, there's a new tweak in terms of like what's happening, update wise, stuff like that. It's kind of like we just kind of need to get to January now and to kind of like just get it over and done with. But yeah, we're getting there. What I was going to ask you is if your brand right now, for the brands right now who are listening, what would be your piece of advice for them if I'm going to give two scenarios, if they are a brand that are already on TikTok Shop right now, and then the second scenario is for brands who have been flirting with the idea of getting onto TikTok Shop, what would you tell them right now?
Yeah, I really can't blame brands that are just like they're in the wait and see mentality because if you're gonna put a lot of time, money into it, what's waiting one more month to get more clarity? Don't blame that at all. If I were them and I had like the extra bandwidth, I would at least get registered on Shop, like get the account open, sync the products over, that kind of thing. just to be ready to go. Because I do think if the news is positive, there's going to be a ton of
Sure.
investment going into the platform where it's going to get really competitive. Versus if you were to first half of January start pushing on it, I think it would be less competitive because it's really going to open the floodgates. So many brands are just kind of in that wait and see mode. And then January is also great for like health and wellness.
Yeah.
And a lot of the brands on TikTok Shop are like supplement brands. So a lot of them are going to be pushing hard first half of January because they have inventory, they have revenue goals they're trying to hit, regardless if TikTok goes down or not. They might even be pushing harder. And then that second half of January, if it's not going anywhere, it's going to be, I think it's going to be crazy in terms of how many brands are onboarding or trying to get affiliates or trying to dump money into it. So I think same as us, where you have to take like a risk adjusted approach where it's like, hey, if you have really high sales targets, revenue targets in 2025, you may just want to take the risk and start pushing from January 1st. And then if, and 2 weeks later, if it doesn't pan out and it does get shut down, then it's like, how much did you lose? You sent out like a couple hundred samples. You just started increasing your ad budget, whatever. Versus if it doesn't, then it's like, hey, you're rolling by then. Because we both know that it takes time, it takes momentum
Yeah.
to get going on
Exactly.
TikTok Shop. You got to hit that, like, it's like that second or third month that it really starts picking up. So really the sooner the better. And really the initial investment's not huge. I mean, depending on what you want to do, if you want to pay a bunch of flat creators, that could really add up. But if you just want to start seeding out some samples, seeing what products are getting the most interest from affiliates, making sure everything's synced, dealing with any like product certificate issues or like anything that's like flagging the products, you might as well start doing that now, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, you think you nailed it on the head there. I feel like, again, it's that high risk, high reward, right? So again, like say, if you are ready to kind of go, let's say you're kind of like in this down period, well, let's say if you're just in the holidays, you got a bit of time to like say upload products, make sure everything is all ready. And then like say January, just send some samples out. Because like say, the worst case scenario is you're going to send some samples out, you're going to get some content back. And if TikTok goes, do you know what I mean? It's not the end of the world. It's no different than if you was on Instagram sending some samples out to some influencers on there, and who knows what happens from that side of things, right? So again, it's not the be all and end all. So I totally agree with you that I think that worst case scenario, if you've got the bandwidth, definitely just try it. Because again, I feel what's happened, and especially like if we revert back to the last 12 months, there's always been muttering about TikTok's going to get banned, TikTok's going to get banned. Joey, I've heard it so many times now. And I feel like the brands that keep waiting for it to happen are the ones who are regretting that they're not started earlier, because obviously now we've got like DMV restrictions in terms of like reach out to creators. We've got obviously like ads to get hot. It's just getting a lot harder. So whereas like say the brands that were kind of like, well, again, which we'd say that the legacy TikTok shop brands, they're the ones that are still reaping the rewards now from obviously just jumping head first, trying it, breaking it, not bothered about getting signed off, kind of just like going for it. They're the ones that kind of reaping it. And like say, worst case scenario, if you started last January and you just get banned this January, if you've made some good money, it's not the end of the world, right? So again, if you have to pivot, that is kind of where we're at, right? So again, I feel like, yeah, you're spotting in terms of like say brands right now. If you're still on the platform, obviously continue as normal, because if it stops, it stops, it is what it is. If you are thinking to kind of get on there, then yeah, there's no harm in doing it, right?
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that mentality, especially in terms of like you're saying, like you're gonna get some content coming in. So if you have an affiliate that posted, you start to identify who are good affiliates, like they're driving some sales on TikTok Shop. I mean, if it's gonna get banned, like the day, the 2 or 3 days before, start collecting their contact information, get
Mhm.
their WhatsApp, and just transition them onto a different platform because they're gonna be eager to do that. They're gonna be wanting to do that too. But they're like, hey, who are the brands that want to work with me so that I can just,
Yeah.
start posting somewhere else, posting on Instagram if it gets banned. So then you have their contact information, you start building that Rolodex of affiliates that are, because it's really like 5% of your affiliates that are driving like 90% of your revenue. Start
Exactly
getting
right.
them, yeah, put them in a group, put them in Discord, put them in like a WhatsApp group, start to like build relationships with them. And I think just like very rarely, like you're saying, like there's been talks of TikTok getting banned since like 2020. Trump has tried to ban it by
Right.
like executive action, like it's gotten reversed.
Right.
Like, like you said, if you've been waiting, like what has been like 4 years since like the first
Yep.
talks of it getting banned, or like maybe from the start, like it was always like, okay, this might not be here next year. Um, Pessimism is just like very rarely works like in your favor. Where it's just like,
Awful.
the brands that are just like, okay, we'll figure it out mentality. Like, okay, if it gets banned, we'll figure it out. It won't be the end of the world. those are the ones, like you said, are starting to really reap the benefits. So what we've seen recently is like there's almost like kind of in a lot of people understand this from Meta, where it's like some of your past winners that have a lot of social proof and they've been like the algo just starts to really love them. That's what it pushes spend to. Even if you launch new creatives, it's like, nope,
Mhm.
these old creatives are gonna outperform. Same thing is kind of true on TikTok Shop, where it's like if you have a product or a brand that now has all that social proof, like they've been on the channel going viral on and off for months, they have tons of orders and tons of reviews, those are really going to win out versus like the new brands that are trying to launch. It's just a lot harder because you don't have that social proof. You haven't had like viral videos yet. So it's like all those like existing performers, like even if you let off the gas, you stop sending samples, you start to like not really care about TikTok Shop, you're still hovering at like a very solid revenue that like a new brand would kill to get to because
Yeah.
they're trying everything and they can't. So that kind of model of like once you get momentum, you're good. And the longer you've been playing in the game, the easier it is. Some of our top brands have just been on since TikTok Shop was a thing. Like they've been on for like a year. So if that's the way the world works, a lot of times in D2C and in marketing, where it's just like longevity, building up that social proof, getting something that
Well,
like the algo starts to understand who to show it to after a couple months, then it's like very weighed in the favor of launching now and launching earlier and moving earlier.
yeah, that I think you nailed it spot on there again, because I feel like it, and like I say, move away from TikTok. It's the same what you do on any platform. The longer you're doing it for, again, that's social proof. Again, if you want Amazon, you launched obviously from day one. You're probably still killing it now because again, you've just obviously got all that social proof in terms of your reviews, your sales numbers, the algorithms pushing more people to you. Because again, it's that trust factor. Because all these platforms, and again, I know we talk about TikTok, but all the platforms want is to make sure their user, customer is obviously being fulfilled, whether that's obviously from a content perspective or good product quality, all that kind of side of things. You're ticking the box for that. TikTok, all these platforms are going to keep sending you users, keep sending you traffic, and you're going to get rewarded for it. So again, it's just all about just being smart about how you treat these platforms, whether again it's TikTok, whether again it's Meta, or whether another platform comes along. You just have to kind of play the game. You have to be in it. You've got to, like I say, try it, break it, and just like I say, first move advantage is always key, right? Again, if you can kind of just get that, because again, what works today, sorry, what worked like say 12 months ago might not work today, right? So again, it's all about figuring it out, kind of like maxing out as much as possible. Okay, it's not working now. Let's change the game again. And obviously, we both know like Golly obviously came on incentivizing obviously all these creators again. Incentives was never, it's never anything new. Do you know what I mean? In terms of like in pro product stuff, like it's always been a thing about Golly for let's bring it to like TikTok Shop, and obviously they reap the rewards for it, right? So yeah, I think definitely just being able to be thinking outside the box, just playing the game. I think that's the way you're going to win going forward, whether again it's TikTok Shop or any platform personally.
Yeah, 100%. I think goalie's a good example within an example. It's like not only like they weren't the first movers on TikTok Shop. They
Well,
came in it's like a few months ago. There was already like supplement brands doing really well, but they catapulted quickly by doing something or by being the first to do the affiliate contest. And now we're seeing a lot of brands trying to copy that model where they're doing affiliate contests. Some of them have great prizes as well, but it's really hard to get that attention that goalie already built from their first contest. So it's like an example within an example. It's just like a first mover's advantage. They were like, okay, nobody's doing this, we'll do it. And now they're still doing it, and those contests do well versus like a new brand trying to launch that contest. It's just like, all the affiliates are already looking over at goalie. They know goalie's giving out the prizes. They know it's legit. They know like the videos are going viral and the products are good. They convert. So it's hard to convince them to come over to your side, even if you're offering the same benefits. And I like that you touched on Amazon as well in terms of like the benefit of getting on there early. Because now, like if you have a solid search rank on Amazon, and if you just maintain that, it can be a crazy number of sales. And I think what's nice is like TikTok Shop has always come in with that mentality, which is why I was always confused. I'm still not 100% sure how the like checkout with Amazon was gonna work, because I've always thought of them as such competitors. Like I think that might have just been a rumor, or it fell through pretty early, because it's like why would TikTok Shop let people check out on Amazon. I know they've
I'm,
done those integrations, and it does. I've seen a
yeah, it
couple
still makes
videos
sense
where you
with it.
can. Yeah, and I just don't really see them pushing that because I've seen a couple videos where it has linked to Amazon using these new integrations. But at the end of the day, like when they launched, I remember they were pushing so heavy on like the SEO terms, to, like make this like very searchable. They give you like these new rankings where it's like fair or poor if you don't stuff enough keywords. And at the beginning, I was like, man, I'm not spending time on doing this because 95% of my traffic is coming from the videos.
Yeah.
None of it's coming from search. I'm starting to slowly see that change where it's like when we're spending on GMV Max, we do see like a good number of sales coming from the product cards, which leads me to think it's hard to trace a lot of that stuff, but it leads me to think that like, hey, if TikTok Shop is getting more and more mature, there's customers who are buying from it all the time. There's going to get to a point where instead of waiting for a video to influence them to buy something, they're just going to go on and search for it because now they're using TikTok Shop all the time. They like it. They know that the products have a lot of orders, a lot of reviews are usually pretty good because they've gone viral. So it's starting to become a search platform in my eyes. It might take some time, but like now it makes even more sense because it's like, hey, if you're getting a lot of orders and reviews through these videos, through seeding to affiliates, and then now there's also a search rank, there's like more search volume, then it becomes like even more of a first mover's advantage because it's like it's not as much like Amazon where you're just going to pour a ton of money into like PPC or something and try and improve your search rank and do all these things. It's like you almost have to get your search rank from going viral on
Exactly.
through the video side. So I think it won't be as easily gameable, which means like you do have to push heavy on TikTok Shop the way it was meant to be with videos and really good content, and then benefit from the search traffic spillover, which could be huge, like being like the number one keyword ranked for ashwagandha gummy or some other crazy like product that's going viral on TikTok, where then people start searching for it. That could be huge as well. And what we're seeing with Amazon is like everyone except the customer seems to be happy with it. Like customers still like Amazon. Like I use
Yeah.
Amazon 2-day shipping. That's great. Like we're seeing like the
And they're right.
workers, doing strikes and just like being very unhappy with Amazon. We're seeing brands become very unhappy with Amazon where the fees keep increasing. The TikTok Shop seems like the only good alternative where it's like, the fees aren't that high. It's like 6% category fees. They're still doing some subsidies or doing some partial subsidies of free shipping. And consumer sentiment still seems to be pretty good on TikTok because they've been pretty strict on like violations and things for brands that didn't have good reviews. I haven't seen a lot of videos where people are complaining about TikTok Shop. So as long as it's good for the customer and then like it's still good for the brand where like a lot of brands start onboarding the TikTok Shop and maybe fewer of them decide to get on Amazon. Because I think once you're on Amazon, it's kind of golden handcuffs. You're like, wow, this sucks. I'm making like 2% profit, but
But it's
it's
gotcha. Yeah,
driving so many
exactly right.
units. Yeah, you're not going anywhere. But like if some of these newer DTC brands are like, hey, I don't really want to get on Amazon because I think it's just gonna be a pain in my ass having to deal with all these fee increases all the time and being worried that I'm profitable. I'm just gonna onboard a TikTok Shop first before I go to Amazon. Which I've seen some brands, like I've seen Kanpai Foods, they're on TikTok Shop. I don't think they're on Amazon
Yep.
and they're in retail. So I've been seeing that happen. If that becomes a trend, then I think Amazon definitely has something to worry about.
Yeah, no, and I definitely think it's a trend, whether speaking to just people in general or brands or like people thinking to launch, they're kind of thinking with that mentality of TikTok Shop first, start there as that channel to kind of get that kind of discoverability. And obviously from then onwards, go to then Amazon. Even like people thinking more TikTok Shop over DTC now as well, which is interesting as well to kind of think, oh, that's the thought process where some of these brands are going in terms of thinking, okay, if I get this right as a channel, then kind of bring everything else into kind of ecosystem, which again, 12 months ago, that was never going to be in anyone's thought process. It was always going to be, you have to see first, then Amazon, then maybe even retail, and then maybe this thing called TikTok might kind of work and add to the rest of it. But yeah, it's definitely flipped on his head from that side of thing, which again is really interesting how in such a short period of time, everything is literally kind of flipped on its head, which again is just crazy to kind of see.
Yeah, the ordering has definitely gotten really, really interesting. Like a year or two ago, there was even like Amazon First, right? There was all these like courses
Yeah.
about like how to be an FBA seller on Amazon where you were just like almost just like private labeling and like, or like even some people would like launch a private label brand on Amazon First. That's kind of
Mhm.
gone away. I don't see a lot of people talking about that as much. I'm sure it still exists a bit, but it's like now if you were to launch a brand from scratch, especially if it was like a supplement brand, you would be most likely TikTok shop first. You wouldn't be Amazon first. You wouldn't be like Meta ads first. So that's interesting. And I see that becoming a thing for food and bev as well. You're seeing all these like big brands on TikTok shop, like Prime Bites and things like that, where like they're doing so well on TikTok shop. It's been one of the categories that's been easiest for us to get traction, has been TikTok shop. So I'm thinking like, if you can design a brand that's just very TikTokable, right? It just like has those aesthetics. It's got a really cool form factor. It's got protein or whatever the flavor of the month is in terms of like
Big
ingredients.
rebels
Yeah.
with the
You have that and you design it for TikTok shop and you launch it on TikTok shop first. Then it might even be like, that's your core business where it's like the Amazon is just, because I see that now more as like, okay, let me capture the organic spillover, the organic demand spillover to Amazon. Let me be on Amazon to capture that. Not really like, okay, let me try and like spend a ton of money on ads and like try to get a lot of people to buy on Amazon. It's just like, okay, if they're going to be searching on Amazon for my brand or the product already, let me not let it go to a competitor, which is just doesn't seem like a very long-term great thing for Amazon where that's how people are thinking and not like, let me launch my brand on Amazon. Let me funnel everyone to Amazon.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Oh gosh, I could play this all day with you, man, but I know obviously we're pushing for time now. So with everything said, what's your kind of last thoughts in terms of TikTok shop, TikTok ban, where we reconnect? Will it be here? Will it not be here? What's your final thoughts?
Yeah, final thoughts is that I don't think it's going anywhere in 2025. I think it's just these things take time to play out. There's still a lot of like challenges and questions that I think like need to be like settled before it'll go anywhere. We'll see. By the next time we talk, we'll know if we were accurate in that or not.
Literally, right. So as soon as everyone listens to this, the next podcast hopefully will be us kind of either celebrating, obviously, TikTok shop continuing, or me and Zane crying, looking for jobs at the job center.
Yeah, there might not even be another podcast, man, if that doesn't, you know.
Exactly. I think this will be the one of ones. I hope you all enjoyed it. But no, but everyone, thanks for listening to this. Again, obviously, Zane, it's been a pleasure speaking to you around. I hope everyone obviously found this as useful. Because again, for myself, I find these useful to have these conversations. I think that it's just perfect to kind of just chat about what's obviously happening in this space right now. So yeah, I hope everyone gets some value from this.